Thanks, Jason. Always great to talk to you. My name is Dennis Borel. I'm with the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities. I'm the executive director there. It's a nonprofit, primarily advocacy organization. It's cross disability, which means we deal with all kinds of disability of all age ranges. There are many organizations that focus on, as you know, a certain disability, a certain chronic condition. Many of those organizations I work with and essentially do advocacy work with, and those may be everything from the Council of the Blind to the MS Society, the Epilepsy Foundation, as well as all kinds of smaller groups around the state of Texas. We have about around 120 different organizations that are affiliated with us. We're pretty much the people near the Capitol in Austin, Texas, that tries to make the world a little better place for people with disabilities through public policy or working with the state agencies. We do a few other things. We do community organizing around the state. We have some communications arms through social media and websites and newsletters, keep people informed. We have a direct service program, consumer directed services, where we have around 350 people that we support to live in their own homes with Medicaid-based community attendance. And we also have a pretty robust disability arts program that's a lot of fun, ranging from the Cinema Touching Disability Film Festival you and I have talked about, as well as creative writing and even a live open mic we do here in Austin about once a month. So we do a lot of different things, but the core thing is just to essentially make the world a better place, to change attitudes, to change public opinion, and to change public practice and public law.
How long has it been around for?
It was formed in 1978, so it's one of the older, disability rights groups, if you will. It predates the ADA. I've been around for the last 20 years. So we're small, a staff of 12, but again, in the world of disability organizations, that's not too small at all.
No, that's what I say. That's really big.
Yeah. It's usually about 2 or 3 people by themselves trying to make change.
Oh, that's great. And then, how long have you worked there for?
Yeah, 20 years. So I've been, which is amazing to me to think I've been there that long. But yes, in the year 2000 is when I joined, and at that time there was 3 employees, me being one of the 3. And so it's grown over the years some, and our reach has grown, and so we've moved from being a precarious nonprofit to one that's relatively solid. And in today's world, that's not bad at all.
So I trying during this time, I'm doing a lot of interviews. I'm relating it to the currently what's going on in our world. So how are you guys, or where are are you changing the work you do with your constituency during this time because of COVID-19?
Well, I would say that we're not necessarily changing our work, but we may be changing, and we are changing the way we do it. In our direct service program, we are no longer able to meet with our clients. In fact, that's one of the policy changes, is that there are no longer face-to-face meetings with clients, keeping in mind that our clients are, as people with disabilities, many of them are older, are in the the euphemistic term is people with underlying medical conditions. Of course, everyone we serve, 100% of those people are meeting that criteria. So we have a high-risk population. So we're doing that more remotely. And as far as our some pretty aggressive community organizing we were planning this year, we're making plans to do a lot of that virtually instead of doing it in person, instead of going to, Houston or Dallas or Beaumont or El Paso and doing roundtable events in person, which are always tremendously valuable. We're going to have to do that virtually. And so we're working on our Zoom skills, our ability to communicate with the tools we have. So even our film festival, we're preparing to turn that into an online platform if we are unable to hold it in the theater as we hope to this fall. So while not one of our goals has changed, Jason, not a single one, but we're having to adapt the way we work to meet those goals.
Great. Have there been any challenges or any stories that you would like to share with the general public about how life's adapted during this time?
There's a couple, and I'll start with the incredibly positive one, and that has to do with, as I said, we had 350 individuals in our what we call our consumer-directed services program, where they're in charge of their own community care attendant and all. Of course, they can't do things like write paychecks or file Medicaid claims or do criminal background checks. We do all that for them. In a period of 2 days, we went from doing that in an office environment to a remote working environment to 5 different residences. And I was really proud, really, really proud of the folks who did that happen seamlessly. And that's worked beautifully. On the very downside is we lost one of our team members to COVID-19, and that just changed our perception of what this pandemic is. Even before then, I certainly realized how serious it all was. But when all of a sudden someone someone you work with, says, "Hey, I'm sick at home." Everybody had gone home, was working from home. Checks in, says, "Yeah, man, I'm really, really sick." He appeared he was going to get through it, and he didn't. He didn't make it, and passed away. And that was just like having the reality slam you in the face, that this really is a terrible, horrible situation, and we haven't had a chance to have a memorial service for him or to closure or say goodbye. Instead, we're having to try to figure out how to pick up the strands he left behind and doing emergency changes to make sure our work can continue. And so that's been it's been the up and the down in this pandemic.
Wow, that's really hard.
Yeah, it was very hard.
So I think that's pretty close. So do you have anything to share with anybody? So anything you'd like to share about what it's like during this time, or just in general that you'd want to pass on for other people to think about, or no?
Yes, thanks, Jason. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And one of the things that's really, really obvious to me, and I will admit, working in Texas is usually at the bottom or very close to the bottom of the rankings of states and community services. And what the pandemic has exposed is years of neglect in services to people with disabilities. It's left huge exposures, and you can see it in the segments of the disability community. The most unfortunate folks are those who are in congregate settings, who are institutionalized. Those have been hit the hardest, the worst kinds of outcomes, the highest illness rates, the highest death rates. And what that should point to is that we need to have our community minimally in a congregate setting, and in the much safer community settings where they're in their own homes or maybe with just a small number of people. But to do that, we have to support community-based services, and we don't. It's not a surprise. It's well known that before the pandemic, we were facing a perfect storm, and that perfect storm was about the community attendant workforce. And by what do I mean by that? Is for years we had neglected to pay them appropriately. And actually, we have these records that show this, the erosion of the wage. We haven't even kept up with inflation. You know, the pay of the community attendants has eroded by 30% in the last 25, 30 years. It's gone straight downhill. Meanwhile, the number of older people is increasing and the number of younger people with disabilities is increasing. Here in Texas, that was reflected in a study done by the Texas Workforce Commission, which is our jobs agency. And what they did is they listed the 10 highest growth occupations in Texas over the next 5 years, the 10 highest growth. At the top was the community attendant. That was the highest growth occupation. And it was higher than the next 9 high growth occupations combined. So we have an extremely underpaid, neglected workforce, a increasing demand, and where are we going to go with this? And yet we know, and we have proven, that people who live in the community live more engaged lives, healthier lives. And frankly, when it comes to the public health dollar, it's a lot cheaper to support somebody to live in the community who can then work, such as yourself, such as 2 of the people who work with me are on Medicaid. I know many others that do volunteer work that are part of their faith community. If they're out in the community, they're spending money, so they're like paying taxes. If they're in an institution, they're using tax dollars. So we need to be really smart and kind of shift it back, rebalance. Number one priority has to be strengthening a community workforce and a community care programs. And we can do that by reducing reliance on institutions, which are very expensive, and do it in a way that I think is actually overall cost effective.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Dennis, I was talking to my mom actually about the Star Plus waiver program. So is that the only option for somebody in my situation to get something similar to what I have in New York?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, do you have 24/7 in New York?
Yeah, no, I won't get anything like that.
No, you won't get anything like that.
Well, how many hours do you think it would come to that I even get?
I would say if you get 60 to 70 hours, you'd be getting a high number of hours. And keep in mind that would be, waiver level, the Star Plus waiver. There are other waivers, they're IDD waivers, but to do that, you have to manifest your disability before age 22. I'm not so sure if that applies to you.
Yeah,
okay.
No.
So that narrows you down to the Star Plus waiver. So, and I know we've talked about this and it pains me to say it. I remember one time we were talking about it and you said, what can I do? And I said, well, have someone fall in love with you so they can provide a little natural supports, as they call it, in between times when when an attendant can't be there. And that's a terrible answer, because I think you're a lovable guy. It's a lot. That's no way to start a relationship, to use it as a solution to your workforce problems. But no, the Star Plus waiver is still there. It serves a lot of people. There are people who get by on those, and a lot who get by on that level of care.
Oh,
It's
how
not
long
easy.
would it take to? So if I was making a plan to come there in the fall, how long would it take to get that implemented?
Well, what you'd have to do is, first of all, you'd have to try to transfer your Medicaid eligibility that's already been established in New York. I would try to work on that, even if you're truly planning to permanently move here, to try to make that happen. Because almost the worst thing that could happen is you get here and you find out that that there's some sort of interruption in services, and then you're really kind of hung out to dry. That would be dangerous. So, and then you have to find out, you'd be assessed, and then, what kind of services they would allow you to have. You'd also have to find a place to live. There are a few group homes here, but not very many, and that's only for the IDD waivers. Again, you have to qualify. The only way you qualify for those is if your disability manifests before age 22. And you know what? That's another incredibly bad public policy. What difference does it make? Age of onset is irrelevant. What is relevant is functional need. That's what's relevant. Yeah. But nonetheless, you'd have to deal with that, and it would be a lot of work. But if you ever want to take a stab at it, I know I would be happy to try to figure out some way to run some traps for you down here. It's not easy.
Yeah, that's great. Then how long? So, like, back to my question, how long would it take to even qualify for the Star Plus waiver? So I've never done anything like this before. So
okay, well, let's see. First of all, are you on SSI?
Yeah.
So you are. Okay, so that would qualify you for Medicaid in Texas. So then you'd have to go to we have a managed care system primarily. You'd have to get hooked up to one of those. They would assess you. It would probably take 3 or 4 weeks, I would think, at a minimum. And that's why I would suggest you would want to start the process before you ever came.
Yeah, okay. So I'm thinking about something like this at the end of the summer. So there is some time. I just have to even mentally think about what this process is. But I just can't it's just too difficult watching my son get older and older, but from afar. I just can't keep doing it, especially during this time where we're completely separated. So I think that's the next possibility.
Jason, what does it say about our society that we would put people into that kind of conundrum? Be a caring, loving father part of your son's life, or being able to live independently. I mean, what kind of that is not a fair choice that people should have presented to them. In fact, it's a terribly unfair.
Yeah.
It's immoral, in my opinion. It's an immoral choice, and that's something we need to work on in this day and age. We're in the last few days seeing some of the disparities in society on an even larger scale are coming to light. We have a lot of work to do as a society.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.